What's going on, everybody? Liam O'Reilly, Vermont Economic Realtor. Hope you're doing well. Wanted to talk today about this video right here. It was published by MHFIN, who is another real estate channel focusing on primarily residential real estate from what I've seen. I watch almost every video that he puts out. I really like his channel. The most recent video that he put out was about how, in his opinion, the crash is likely to come from investors, from this investor craze that has happened over the past, since the pandemic, really is essentially his argument. And there's a lot of data to suggest that investors have increased and real estate investors have skyrocketed since the pandemic. And I completely agree with that, but I don't agree that investors are going to lead this real estate crash. And one of the big reasons that he states in his video, and I'll leave it in the description so you folks can watch it as well. I would recommend watching it. It'll be a good comparison to this video if you don't know the points that I'm talking about. But one of the big things that he states as to why investors will lead the crash is that people can purchase investment properties with FHA loans, have limited equity into the property, and if the property doesn't continue to go up, then they can go underwater very quickly, which is true. It's absolutely true. But as somebody who is a realtor, so I guess obviously I got a comment the other day that I should mention that I'm biased, and I am biased because I am a realtor. I'm in this industry, but at the same time I'm working with buyers and sellers, and the offers that sellers are accepting, the buyers that are having success in the market, especially over the past 2 years when the craze that he's referencing started. What happens, or the buyers that were getting these homes are people that were well qualified. It was very difficult for an FHA buyer to purchase a property over the past few years. It is still difficult for them to do that, to purchase a property, because there's so much competition in the market still right now, at least where I am here in Vermont. And the competition was insane from 2020 to until now, until 2023, and that people couldn't put a limited amount of equity down into a home because they were getting beat out by all cash buyers or people that were putting a significant down payment down and could cover a large appraisal gap. So there wasn't a huge place in the market for people with limited equity. So that's the first thing I'll say. And then the second thing I'll say is that he mentions the 2008 crash, where there's new studies coming out that the 2008 crash was investor led, but from what I've seen from those studies is they pretty much pertain to flippers, for people who were purchasing property and were speculating that the home would go up and they could get out of it or refinance it at a later date, because the price would go up and they'd have the ability to do so. And then when prices crashed, they had to sell for a loss. They were bankrupt on their mortgages, and they lost out. They lost out as investors. But now there's people are, the debt is just structured better, and I could understand how flippers could cause a crash that are expecting housing prices to continue to rise. But people who are purchasing rental property properly through resources like utilizing resources like Bigger Pockets, which teaches you how to do that, or these other YouTube channels. I mean, there's so much access to information these days that investors are much more knowledgeable than they were and are purchasing properties that cash flow right away, so that even if their equity goes down, they're not forced to sell. Okay, and maybe some of these people who don't have much equity, even if they're underwater, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're forced to sell. But talking about equity, I wanted to bring up this data. So again, this is the video that I'm talking about. So right here, get to the top here once it loads. Homeowner equity keeps growing across the U.S. in the third quarter of 2022 here. It's January 2023, so we don't have, at least Adam here doesn't have the fourth quarter data out yet. At least I haven't seen that, despite housing market slowdown. So maybe the fourth quarter is going to look different than that, but 54% of mortgage residential properties in the United States were considered equity rich in the third quarter, meaning the combined estimated amount of loan balances secured by these properties was no more than 50% of their estimated market values. So if you have 50% equity in your property, which almost half of Americans do, and in some states it's more, in Vermont it's almost 75% of Americans have at least 50% equity. That means your home value could drop by 50% and then you're still not underwater on your mortgage. And you know, it just goes into what I said at the beginning, where people who were purchasing homes over the past few years, most of those people were cash buyers. Those were people who had were putting hefty down payments down. And if we look here, this is the Fred's chart, household owners equity in real estate. That's what this is charting. So obviously this has to do with home prices, right? As home prices go up, the equity in your home goes up. If you bought in 1990 here and the home prices went up around 2005, you have a lot of equity in your home. But I know, so this is a correlation. It could be people who bought before and then equity increased, but at the same time, a lot of people who are purchasing these homes aren't people who are heavily leveraged, and we see that by the amount of equity in these properties. Yes, it's correlated to the price increases, but I still think this chart is a decent explanation of that. And then here we go. Just one more point on that video that, again, and I love his channel, MHFIN. I'm gonna link this video in the description. He's a great YouTuber. He makes great videos, but one of the stats that he mentioned was that 33% of home purchases in the U.S. were made by investors, which the stat that he was referencing, it was from John Burns, and how John Burns defined investor was anybody who had a tax bill that didn't go to the house that they own, so it went to a different property. Because if you own an investment property, your tenants aren't going to get the tax bill from that property. It's going to go to you. But the thing is, it's also going to go to you if you own a vacation property or something along those lines, or if you are purchasing a property for your kid to live in while you're at college. I mean, I guess that could be considered an investment property, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is an investment property. And when you look at how Redfin categorizes it, they categorize it as being we define an investor as an institution or business that purchases residential real estate. So not necessarily that the tax bill doesn't go to the property, but that it's an institution or business purchasing the property. Now, that share of people is 17.5%. So, obviously far less than a third, almost half of what he was suggesting. So, it's very tempting. He makes good points. He makes good points in this video. It's very tempting to watch this and think that investors are going to lead a massive crash that's just around the corner. But in my opinion, from the data that I've looked at and the data that I've shown on this video, there's at least another argument to say that the investors are not going to lead the crash, at least in the single family market. Now, I think in large multifamily, because of the way that the debt is structured and the fact that these multifamily, a lot of people who bought large multifamily might have purchased it with on variable rate loans that are going to refinance. Same with like other commercial real estate, like office buildings and stuff that are going to, that their rate is going to adjust in the upcoming years. And if the Federal Reserve keeps rates high and mortgage rates remain high, if they locked in a rate originally and the property worked at a 3% rate or a 4% rate, now when they're at a 6, 7, 8% rate, they might not have cash flow from that property. And in that sense, they are underwater. But a lot of these residential single-family investors have debt that's structured differently. It's on 30-year fixed-rate loans or maybe a 10-year adjustable rate mortgage, and like I mentioned, they have a lot of equity in these homes on average. And And as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I know that because I've worked with both sets of buyers, and I've represented sellers looking at both offers. And when the buyers that aren't as financially well off and are putting less down, less and entering the home with less equity are aren't getting these properties. And it's really difficult. I don't really know many lenders who will refinance and give you more than 20 or excuse me, than 80 or 85% of the appraised value. You can get an FHA loan product for 3.5% down, but you can't refinance and take 96.5% of your equity out of your property. The bank doesn't let you do that in most cases. So anyway, Liam O'Reilly, Vermont Economic Realtor. If you're looking to buy or sell a home here in Vermont, all my contact information is in the description. I'd be happy to help you. If you are searching in another state, I'd be happy to find you a great realtor so you're not stuck with somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. Other than that, please leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Am I right? Am I wrong? And please give MHFIN a like and a follow and watch his video. He's, like I said, he's got a great channel. Obviously a much bigger YouTuber than I am. But that's my thoughts on his video. I'll see you guys in the next one.